to lean on me.
All right.
Some time in our life, we all have pain. We all have sorrows, but there is a world that condemns us for admitting so. You're too weak. You need grit. You need a growth mindset in order to reset your ideas of perseverance. But the truth is, we're just trying to ask for help. When we don't get it, we pretend for the gram. We put on facades for the fam. We wear our smiles like accessories, and the rest of the outfit be damned. That was my nephew Jordan. He suffered inward in silence, yet the noise he couldn't drown out. He carried a cross that was too heavy because he knew others would have doubts. That he could raise a child in his condition, bring hollow dreams to fruition while still wishing that the pain would just go away. He could remember the last time he was happy, the last time he laughed, the last time he looked toward a future without being reminded of the pain in his past, or in his present, or in his future years. So he decided it would be smarter to permanently dry all his tears and stop the tireless cycle of isolate, wince, and repeat. And so with one blast to his maker he would meet. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow, but there's no tomorrow.
For Arlana.
She prays that we know she is at peace, while a piece of her legacy refuses to cease the anguish of just not knowing what was really going on. Or she was really going through the pursuit to please others, yet to please herself there was no pursuit. She had written so many suicide notes in her life, but had finally reached her end, yet she still had hope that her death would allow us to check in and be present always and never give up, though she admits her contradiction. I've lost my connection to God and the devil is one. But that's okay, I think, y'all. I don't blame anyone. I've always dreamed of becoming so many things, but the road just became too tough. And despite what I am, enough is enough. No, it's not enough. I'm not enough, and I haven't felt enough, and I feel so ashamed. And she said all this to say the battle's over. I've cheered my last name.
If Jordan and Arlana were here
today, I simply wrap my arms around them and say, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. And if you are singing that song for yourself or for someone, don't dare feel that you're wrong. And if you need me, I'm here, and together we'll walk. But if I'm away, please dial 1-800-273 talk. Because your story is not finished, and I want to read it to the end. Just know that the rest is still unwritten, and you can lean on me, my friend. So together with me, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
That's good stuff, man. That was beautiful, brother.
Appreciate you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Making Learning Addictive, the show where we bring on special people who are doing some innovative things to make our students and our teachers fall in love with learning for learning's sake. And like we do every month, we dedicate at least one of our shows to mental health awareness and social emotional learning and its necessity to have it embedded in today's learning environment. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Got my boy, Counselor Craig, on tonight. What's going on, Calvin? How you doing, man?
I can't call it, man. Just trying to recover from the conclave. Root to the cues. Root to the
Okay.
cues.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can do a divine nine roll call if we need to in the chat. It's all good. They're actually pretty dope. We might have to do that one day, for sure. But tonight, ladies and
We're gonna
gentlemen,
work
this
on that.
yeah, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, it's a special night. We're going to be talking to. She's a friend of the family. She was introduced to our family while she was taking care of her father and staying with my mom and dad, and she just so happened to also work for my sister, who was actually a principal at one point. So any connection like that to my fam, she's a fam of mine. But as you know, a couple of months ago, her daughter gave her life um, to suicide, and she left us with an amazing story that we want to be able to share tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Janice Miller.
Thank you, Brian.
How are you tonight?
I'm making it. Thank you.
All right, doing what you can. I get it for sure. We appreciate you joining us tonight. I see you representing the school colors.
Yes, Southern.
And Calvin, you supporting all black colleges, and I just dropped off my son down at TSU, so HBCU all over the place tonight. But we want to talk about Arlana and your mission to carry on her legacy. So I don't want to necessarily bring up the news, but I want you to actually tell it from your voice, from yourself, because you are her mother and the one who loved her most. So go ahead, tell us a little bit about what happened with Arlana.
Okay, Arlana, which everyone knows, was a freshman cheerleader at Southern University in Baton Rouge. And I spoke to her earlier. She texted me that she was failing a math class. And I quickly called her and I said, just drop the class. And she said, Mom, it's too late. And I said, well, next time, just drop a class whenever you fail in it. And she got quiet on the phone. She's a real quiet, soft spoken person. And she said, Mom, I'm taking 6 classes. And I said, that's too many classes. I said, you took 4 classes in the fall. Next time, just drop your classes. I said, because you couldn't afford to drop classes because you were taking 6. And I said, is there anybody you can call to ask for help? And she just got quiet. And a couple of hours later, I got a call and my phone was just blowing up. And I was getting texts, I was getting calls, and I was like, what's going on? And they was like, Arlana just posted something on Instagram. You need to check her Instagram. And I was like, what? And everybody was calling me. I called a few of the cheerleaders. I called Coach Floyd. Guys, find Arlana. Then her brother Raylan called and said, Mom, I know where she's at. I have her location. And he said she's at the truck stop. And I was like, huh? And then everybody was like, she's by the bridge. So everybody was tracking her location. And we used to joke about it because she would say, Mama, Raylan's always stalking my location. And I was like, well, that's what big brothers do. And she's like, Mom, he's always stalking me. And then later on, Mr. Banks, who's the athletic director, called and told me that they had found Arlana. And I was like, you cannot have the right person. It cannot be Arlana. And he was like, yes, Miss Janice, it is Arlana. And Arlana literally just walked in the Mississippi River. She just kept walking. And Captain Kitty, who's captain of the police department in Baton Rouge, said it's as if she did not try to come back up for air. He said usually the human body reflexes, you try to come back up for air when you're in a lot of water. And part that's kind of confusing is that when they got there, Arlana's phone was still in her hand, the phone was still working, and her keys was in her hand. And he said, if we probably would have gotten there 3 to 5 minutes earlier, we probably could have saved her. Because this is the Mississippi River and her body's just floating up. And she wasn't far from the police station where she was at. So I wasn't there, but they believe that she wasn't in the water long
Mm.
before she died.
And this happened after y'all had that conversation?
Yeah, we talked about, I want to say it was like 5:30 or 6. So this happened like 3 hours later. And I believe she just had a moment. I mean, I wasn't there, but I believe she just had a moment where she felt so much pressure and felt like she just couldn't take it anymore. Because Arlana did leave me a letter in the car, and I thank Captain Kibbe for keeping it.
Okay.
And she expressed in the letter that she was in so much pain
Mm.
and that she was just hurting. And she mentioned that um, she was putting everybody down, but she just had to do it because she just couldn't take the pain.
Yeah.
And she mentioned that she chose water because she said it was less painless.
It's like,
And I was just like, and she said, Mom, I love you. I really do love you. She said, and I know I'm letting people down. She said, but I just can't take the pain. She said, I'm really hurting. And I'm just like, I had no idea she was hurting. We saw her Sunday. We gave the cheerleaders a cheer banquet at Drusilla Seafood in Baton Rouge. And she was the last one to leave. She helped us pack the stuff up. She was just laughing, clowning. She's always smiling, laughing, and goofing off. And I was just like, this can't be because I just saw her Sunday. This is Wednesday.
mm.
We talked about afterwards that I was going to get to Baton Rouge Friday. And we were coming back Saturday because she's moving out her dorm. And I had to help her because she did tear her ACL. And I had to help her with her packing. And we were going to the doctor Monday, Baylor Scott and White Orthopedic in Waxahachie, about 10 minutes from where we live. She had an appointment with them. The doctor in Baton Rouge couldn't do her surgery because if he did it there, she couldn't travel for 6 weeks.
Mm.
And this was like 3 weeks before school got out. And he really didn't feel like her leg was ready. So we were going to go to Baylor Scott and White Orthopedic for a second opinion. And, this happened Wednesday. And I just felt like it was a bad dream. Like, this cannot be happening. Not my baby, because she was always happy.
You could hear, for some people who are familiar with the story, um, they may have read the Instagram post,
Right.
that she left, and you could hear the 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 pain with the words that she wrote,
Right.
and you could see that she felt that she was contradicting herself because she's typically the person that's always checking in on other people. And you could tell that she was just tired of putting on the facade because she was trying to mask her pain by supporting others. And we talked about that, and this is part of the legacy that you actually want to tell and leave for others about this checking in. So I want to visit that just a little bit because one, this is also to check in on you.
Right.
You know?
It's the Arlana Janelle Miller Check In on Your Strong Friends Foundation. And we just want to help others because Arlana was the person that everybody counted on for everything. I mean, she was the person that called and checked on everybody. She was the person who helped everybody. She was the person if you needed tutoring, she tutored you. If you needed a ride, she gave you a ride. If you needed your hair done, Arlana braided hair. She did twists. She made wigs. She did it all. She was just always helping people and encouraging them. And through grief counseling, I'm learning that Arlana dealt with her depression by helping others. And that's how she made it, by focusing on other people and helping them. I believe it was those times when she was alone, she probably had those thoughts. And Coach, I got to give it to Southern University and Southern University Chair. They have really supported and helped us. Also, my church, Community Mission Baptist Church with Pastor S. Um, that's where I go for grief counseling every week. And my son Raylan is also going. And grief counseling has helped me a lot with understanding how people deal with depression and how they do put that mask on and are happy for others because they really are happy for others. But that's how they cope with their depression, by helping people and making sure they're happy. And yet they see good in everybody else, but not themselves. And when Coach Floyd had her going to do all those different games and had her going to do those different appearances, I don't think he realized he was helping her because he was getting her out that room. I
Mhm.
believe it's when she was by herself she felt those thoughts.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Calvin, do you have something? Because I have a question in regards to that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that you made a really wonderful observation just now because I think people think of depression as, I'm sad all the time, I'm
Mhm.
crying all the time, I'm in distress. And that's not necessarily what it always looks like. A lot of people mask their pain with a smile, with, helping others and things like that. And I think we have to really open our minds and our awareness to like what depression really is and what it can look like. It's not black or white. A lot of times it can be really fluid, it can be really gray. So I think that observation is like a great step in the right direction for us to continue to, support one another and help one another. Because I think as from my observation, specifically black women, you all have been conditioned to take, take, take
Mm.
Yeah.
for generations and generations and generations. And no, not everyone gives you all the space to be vulnerable
Mhm.
and to, process. And I think that that's a lot of things that we have endured, could have been, different if we would have said, well, how are you?
Yeah.
Versus, can you
Right.
help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? So,
And that's why the foundation is called Arlana and Janelle Miller, Check on Your Strong Friends Foundation. Because the strong friend is the person who's there for everybody else. But is there anybody really checking in
Yes.
on them? Is there
Yes.
anybody really being there for them like they're there for everybody else?
Right. Because we just naturally assume,
Right.
we make
mhm,
that terrible assumption that if they're doing this for me, that they have it all together. But you're right. It is actually a reflex for them because they are struggling, and I've said this all the time, and I didn't realize the impact it was actually making on me. Is when my cup is empty, I feel it by helping somebody else out. But then I find myself back into that dark space, like, man, where is my encouragement? Where is my support? Where is my help? And then I just repeat that cycle and trying to help somebody else out. But the reality is, my cup is actually never filled from
Mhm.
that. I'm just giving my reserves away for
mhm.
somebody else. And then at one point, I am just completely gassed and I'm tired and I'm done. So I understand that completely. But I want to go back to the checking in on the rooms. Many of our babies are, going off into college, and they are in these dorm rooms, they put themselves sometimes in isolation,
Right.
intentionally or unintentionally, whatever the case is. And one of the things that scares me is when schools, when universities say that their kids are old enough to take care of themselves and they don't need mama and daddy, to check in all the time on them. Is that wrong for them to take that particular stance, even though they're trying to be practicing adults? And we know, scientifically that their brains still aren't ready, to really make decisions as an adult. They're still developing. Is that something that universities need to stop saying and put something in place to prevent that isolation, that staying in your dorm, and so on and so forth, that creates a claustrophobic type of mindset?
I think that comes to you and your child, what type of relationship you have with your child. Elaine and I talk just about every day. We text, and one thing that we always did when we ended our call, we always said we love each other, and I reminded her I would love her more. Um, I just think that parents have to be present. I mean, you have to be there. They may not want you to hug them in front of their friends, but
Right.
hug them. Um, and I know the schools want the kids to be young adults because they are on their own. But I remember somebody mentioned that we don't have access to a lot of things that our students are doing because they are in college. I think that that would be a good thing. They could change it at least to their 21 because, as you stated, they are young adults, and we as parents we are still supporting them
Mm-hmm.
even though they're not in our house. but we're still giving them funds. They're still,
It's
like
still in
you
our
said, are
pocket.
still. I mean, they may be 18 and 19, but they're still our kids, young kids, or as people say, young adults. So if they could change that, I think that would be awesome. But also, it's also up to your child. That's why I say in your relationship with your kid, because they can give you access to their emails and access to their grades. So it works both ways. It's that relationship that you have with your child.
Mhm. So then that goes back to our push, Calvin, is that we need to be starting early
Yes.
in schools, equipping our kids with the tools the tools that they actually need to deal with certain situations where they find themselves in, where they need a cry for help. But you and I, Calvin, we were on a show where we talked about the stigmas. And Janice, I wanted to ask you about this. Do you believe that some of the stigmas that we have, as a culture around mental health, played a role in, her not necessarily reaching out for herself instead of masking it on others? I know it's a tough question, but I just want to know because we find that in our communities. We talked about this a lot, and we're trying to get our people over this. And I ain't gonna lie to you, it took me a long time.
Yes. Some people, I'm not gonna say all African American, but most African Americans think it's embarrassing to mention that you may have depression, anxiety, you may be suffering, and people shouldn't suffer in silence. Brian, it's true. They say 1 in 5 people will attempt or die from suicide. It says 60% will go without ever telling anyone that they're suffering. That's got to change. African American, people of color, Hispanic, suicide is up, if I'm not mistaken, 25 to 35%
Yep.
within the last year. We have not asked our kids how basically this last year, 2 years have affected them.
Mm.
We have not sat down and talked to our kids about how they're feeling. We have not had the conversation that we need to have where we're actually listening to our kids. We got to go back. And the reason why I said we got to go back to when we were little. When you came in, your parents asked you, how was your day?
Yeah.
You sat there at that table, you did your homework while mom, whoever was cooking. We got to go back to just hearing our kids. And we got to go back to having that uncomfortable conversation and letting you know that, hey, you are not weak because you are suffering with anxiety or depression or separation. You are not weak because you're telling me this and that we can get you help. We as a culture are embarrassed to let somebody know that we are suffering. And we got to get past that because you can't help anyone if you don't know.
That's
And we've got to teach them strategies. That's one thing we want to do with the foundation, teach kids how to just stop and just breathe. Stop, call someone, mom, dad. I mean, Arlene had an aunt that she could talk to, Christy, when she couldn't talk to me. So she had the support. She had everything she needed. She just felt, I believe, that she couldn't tell us about the pain, but through writing it to us in the letter.
That, oof, yes, that you hit the nail on the head. I think that sometimes too, we're scared to say certain words like suicide.
Yeah.
Like honestly, ask yourself, how many times have you asked a loved one, have you ever considered suicide or tried it? And
mm,
from my research and my experience as a counselor, is a lot of people think that if you say the words, you're putting the idea in their head. But the reality is, if they're thinking about it, then it's already in their head. And you asking them is no different than saying, you know, would you consider going on this trip? If that makes sense.
yeah. It does. Makes sense. I apologize though. I did get distracted. Corey Fraser put the. I don't know if you saw that in the chat.
Um,
Uh, talk.
separation, separation.
Yeah,
Yeah, separation.
and a lot of it, and we're seeing a lot of this, to where it is connected to performance, or expectation, or pressure to perform at a high level. I'm guilty, as a parent, wanting my kids to excel.
Hmm.
Yes, we pushed A's and B's, whatever the case may be. So I'm one of those parents that did that, but I had to learn that that stuff doesn't define them,
Mm-hmm.
as it is. It was more of a distraction. My daughter told me that at one point, having to compete for grades, having to make a certain GPA, being ranked, all of that was a distraction in my ability to just learn. And it didn't hit until she got to college, and she struggled,
Mm-hmm.
and she struggled, and she struggled, and when she had her episode for herself, I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm sorry, because I've been ignoring this, or I fell into the process of, you just suck it up and drive on. That's how we were raised.
Yeah.
Pick yourself up and just keep moving on, because ain't nobody gonna give you anything.
Mhm.
And that conditioning, is keeping us from being completely transparent with our support and with the struggles that we are going through ourselves. And then Corey would just mention also, he just wish there's some policy that requires our kids
Mm-hmm.
to reach out. But it goes back to what you and Calvin were just saying. We need to equip them with those tools to be able to do that.
Yeah. And everyone knows your freshman year is always your worst year. I mean, everybody struggles their freshman year because that's your first year on your own, your first year away from home, your first year from things familiar to you. So, I mean, I would love if they did have I don't care if it's a class or just if you have to watch modules or meet with counselors, not just your advisor, but maybe the dean on just how to schedule your classes
Mm.
and how to cope with being a freshman away from home and being on your own, and how to cope with just the newness of your school. I mean, I don't know if they really have that, but just going deep and not just, when you do orientation, but throughout the year. I mean,
Mhm.
not just orientation, but what about in the fall when that fall ends
Mm.
and before the spring begins?
Mm.
Can we go back and reintroduce this to these students because they're still struggling,
Yeah.
but it also goes back to your relationship with your kids. I mean, just really talking to them and let them know, hey, you can talk to me about anything. And then when you told me that the suicide number had changed to 3 numbers, I think that's the first step
Mhm.
where it's easier for kids to get help. And, because kids text and do everything quickly. So I think that's even better.
Yeah, I've just put that up on the screen for folks to be able to see. Just recently, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is now 988. Very simplified, you know, very close to 911, because this is an
Yeah.
emergency. It's a life or death situation. So let's go ahead and simplify it. If you know someone, or even if you're going through yourself, reach out for some help, and it's available for you. Go up and then maybe they revisit. Well, Calvin, did you want something to say? Because I don't want to.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
I
want to hog
think
it, bro.
no, you're good, you're good. I think that all the dialogue that we're having, like this is the conversation that we need to have. I think working in schools, we have to get away from the mindset of we've always done it this way. We
Yeah.
have to meet kids where they're at. So,
Hmm.
Yes.
like you said, that 988 number, those kids will probably text that number before they go down the hall and talk to somebody. Sometimes
Mm.
out of convenience, and just sometimes, some kids are shy. And this isn't like school is totally different from when I was in college, 10 plus years ago. So much has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to change with the times if we really want to be productive and effective and efficient in these things. So if I have any parents on this call, I do, highly recommend like K through 12 students attend the PTA meetings, school board meetings. You have a student in college, don't do what you can to understand like the protocols and procedures about like what information they can or can't tell you, and be on the schools and this is your baby, and we don't play about ours.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of pressure that we have to consistently apply. And I think that we're moving in the right direction, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So you have to show up and do your part in whatever way that looks like. So whatever feels comfortable for you, just know that you're being the change that you want to see and providing like the level of care as much as you can give. Because kind of like Brian said earlier, like sometimes we're depleted, and you can't always pour into an empty cup if your cup's empty. So being able to say like, I'm not in the space to maybe talk about this right now, or have you text this number, or have you talked to somebody if you yourself are not there. I think the grace and mercy that we extend to other people, we have to give to ourselves, because we don't give it to ourselves, we can easily, just run our battery dry.
I think it's also important that we connect with our church too, because you have so many ministries in your church that can also help you. That's why I was talking about the communication with your kids. There should be somebody in your family that if your kid can't talk to you, mom or dad, they should have a cousin, a big cousin, sister, brother, aunt, somebody that they can talk to. That's why it's so important to have that support. And I keep saying we got to go back. We always had the support back in the day. Somebody across the street, they saw you doing something, what did they do? They heard up and told your parents.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to get that support back for our babies. I know we've got social media. I know they got the cell phones. I know they got all that stuff, those distractions, but we got to get the communication back where they feel comfortable talking to someone in your family who really can help them. And we don't want them going to anybody. We want them going to somebody who's a licensed counselor, psychiatrist, somebody at the church who really can help them. And it's just really important that we get that support for our babies. If not, those numbers, we can't lose another kid. I'm just being honest. We've got to do something to help our babies. And I'm so serious. I think Southern University, I think they got a mental health grant that's coming up this fall. They started the scholarship for Arlana for a cheerleader this fall, the Arlana Miller Memorial Scholarship. So there's a cheerleader who will actually get a scholarship this fall. They're going to honor Arlana at the first home game, which is Memorial Day weekend. No, Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend. And we're going to present a young lady or a young man with a scholarship. And we're going to do this every year. And I started to think, somebody said, what do cheerleaders do? They cheer everybody on, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
She was cheering everybody on. And I just got to thinking, like, okay, we were cheering her on too, but somewhere she just felt that she wasn't enough. And you guys, I want to say my baby Arlena was an extraordinary young lady. Very smart. She always was a leader. She would help anybody. Elena had things, but they didn't mean anything to her because Elena's favorite store was thrift stores. She loved going to Plato's Closet, any type of thrift store. That was her. So I'm learning that when you have mental illness, none of those things matter because you don't see yourself. You don't see how awesome you are like we see you because you're hurting, you're in pain. So I'm just steady stressing that we got to do something. We can't keep letting not only our babies, but we've got young adults, we've got military men and women who are suffering in silence. And we got to get past the culture stigma, like you said. We're so embarrassed to ask people for help. We got to get past it.
So true. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am actually sharing the website that you can actually go to support the scholarship fund in Arlena's name. The link is also being scrolling across your screen as well. I'm excited that Labor Day weekend game um, is going to be dedicated to her. I know Texas Southern plays Southern, in a couple of weeks after that here in North Texas.
Yeah, I think that's September 17th.
September 17th. So,
Yeah.
hopefully we can do something around here once the foundation gets rolling. We can have some other ways to support mental health awareness, and those tips, and those I don't want to call them tricks, the tools of the trade, so to speak,
Hmm.
to equip people with what they need in order to continue. You know, I have to mention that because somebody just asked me about on Twitter, just asked me about the continue shirt, and I know you had questions about the semicolon. But when we look at a sentence, the semicolon actually says that there's something else that needs to be said. And what we want to do is we want these kids to have the opportunity to continue their stories. All right, so that's what it's from. So we will actually add this, once we get these sweatshirts and T-shirts around, so we can actually help with the foundation and the scholarship fund as well. All proceeds going to that once we get, and we'll have all that information for you guys once it is readily available. But the truth is, we want our kids to continue. We want our adults to continue. We want everyone to be able to continue because your story's not, it's still unwritten, as I said in the poem. But speaking of the poem, and this is the last question I'm going to ask, because I drew a lot from the letter that she wrote on Instagram and poured into that poem. It spoke to me so heavily, so heavily. Um, can't hear the host well. Sorry, sorry. Um, she mentioned she gave an apology in there, and it was to, was it her grandfather, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, my dad.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
My dad, who was like her dad, he spoiled her. Elena, he bought her first horse when I think she was like in first grade. Elena and her cousin Raylan, her cousin, I'm sorry, John, Lauren, and Logan, and her brother Raylan loved to go to my dad's and ride horses, four wheelers, RVs. They just loved going to Papa's house. And my dad died 2 years ago, and I guess she never really got over her grandfather dying.
Yeah,
Um,
it's okay.
it's when somebody asks me how are you dealing with it, grief counseling helps. I go every week, and we talk about an hour to 2 hours, and we have our goals, and we talk about the different things, and we talk about going on and continuing Arlena's legacy because Arlena was a giver. And when you have a kid who would give anything to anyone, you have to continue to give in her name. And my dad also was a giver. He spoiled not only us, I was his only daughter, but he gave to his nieces and nephews. He was just that type of person. So we all have that spirit. My mom, she's on here too. She's a giver also. So in our family, you always gave. We were big on family, still are big on family. We come from a big family. My dad's side, you have the Tappins, the Locks, the Potters. And on my mom's side, you have all these C's, Burrells, and Lees. So Arlena was surrounded by so many people, cousins, uncles, aunts, cousins who was like uncles and aunts. So she came from a big family. And then her dad family is the Millers. So her favorite place I would say was my dad. She loved going to my dad's. But when we moved here 6 years ago, I retired from Louisiana in 2016 and moved here. And she went to eighth grade. And her cousin Christy and Zoe and Maddox became our other family here. That was her second home where she liked to go and help them with Maddox. So it's just she's just a family person. And like I said, her other family here was the Soto Cheer. That was for 4 years. We always, every year we give back. In 2019, the pandemic hit, and when 2020 came, it was time for there was two senior cheerleaders to graduate, and Arlena, we was like, okay, we can't have the banquet, and we always honor our senior cheerleaders. She said, well, Mom, can you start a scholarship in my name? That's how we started the Laney Cheer Scholarship for DeSoto Cheer. And as of now, we've given out 3 scholarships in her name. And I always joke with it. If I can afford it, I'll do it. So she just always was a giver. And she gave to those two seniors that year. And then this year we gave to Gabby. Gabby is going to LSU. She's not cheering, but she's going to LSU. So she just always just was a giver. And I think that comes from our upbringing, from my mom, my dad, her cousins, everybody around us. We just give. And like I said, my daddy was spoiler. Never forget, one time I got home, he took her on a shopping spree at Silver Spurs. It's not there anymore in Bastrop, but it was a Western store. She was the only one who would rake up the leaves. So he actually took her on a spree. And it was like the best thing in the world. She got some new cowboy boots and some Western clothes so she could ride her horse. But I look back on it. Every holiday we would go to my dad for Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. He was big on holidays. And that's what we did. And after he passed, everybody would meet at my mom's house. And that's the last Christmas was at my mom's. So we're just big on family. And even though I'm grieving, I'm still grateful that God gave me 19 years with an awesome young lady. Arlena didn't give me any trouble. See, that's another thing. She's one of those kids that never give you any problems. But yet again, you never think this will happen to your baby. So I thank God for the 19 years that He gave me with her. Um, she used to say, Mom, you're extra. I was like, what? Stop calling it. Because, Mom, you show up at every game. You got a sign. You got the shirt on with my name on it. She even told me, don't bring that to college. Don't wear that shirt with my name on it. And, I did it. I had the shirts made. And I told her, that's what moms do.
Yeah.
And I was like, you show up for your kids. You're there. When her birthday would come, every year I would take some lipstick and I'll write on every mirror in the house, "Happy birthday, Janelle." I call her by her middle name. And we would put up 2 Christmas trees because her birthday is December 12th. And I used to always make sure that we celebrate her birthday because I didn't think it was fair that, people don't celebrate her birthday because it's
Yeah.
2 weeks before
We
Christmas.
were just talking about that.
So we would have 2 Christmas trees. Well, one Christmas tree would be all her birthday gifts, but she didn't know until it was time to open them. That's just how I wanted to make sure we celebrated her,
Yeah.
not knowing that, I would only have 19 years to celebrate this awesome young lady. When she finished high school, she had like a 4.3 GPA. She went to Cedar Valley College. She did the dual enrollment program to get her associate's degree.
Yeah.
She was captain of the cheerleader squad. I mean, coach could call her this past year, and Arlana was always helping the girls that were at DeSoto this year. Um, Coach Floyd had just talked about moving her up to leadership this coming year. Now, Elena was only going to be a sophomore, and he was talking about moving her up to leadership. And she was like, "Mama, all the senior cheerleaders are saying he needs to move me up to leadership." And she's like, "Mom, I'm so happy." And I was like, "Wow, that's awesome. I'm happy for you." This girl loved cheer. On the break, she would come home. We had a private coach, Coach Springs, and he would practice with her. I could just go on and on about the awesome person that she was. That's why when they told me this, it felt like a bad nightmare.
Yeah.
Because this is the kid, like I say, she just excelled at
Yeah.
everything she did. She was just a leader. And she didn't mind helping others, even though she was a leader. And that's why I said you got to check on the strong friends. You got to check on the person who's there for everybody.
Yeah.
Because guess what? They're human too.
Yeah. Indeed.
They've got emotions, they've got feelings, they're struggling also.
I want to thank you. One, for your strength tonight. These are not easy, things to talk about. Um, Secondly, thank you for being grateful for those 19 years.
I am.
I mean, I'm just going to speak, my heart here. We don't know our time, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what, and we have to make the most of the moments that we have. And I'm loving that you're carrying on her legacy, through her goodness, but you're emphasizing what she needed, even if she didn't know she needed it.
Right.
So thank you for that. I know we're out of time, but this is an important conversation that need to be had, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you got something from this conversation as well. I'm going to put up the new number, again, because if you're going through something and you feel that enough is enough, please dial 988. There's someone there to talk to you. It don't matter the language. There's language. There's translators that are available. There's people to talk to. Look, right now, if you're listening to this and you have my contact on YouTube or Facebook, whatever, reach out. We're here for you. Regardless of the stigmas, the anger that you may feel, or even the guilt, that you may feel after experiencing what Janice has experienced, through this particular episode, we implore you, we beg you, to reach out, because it is truly a matter of life and death, in this. Calvin, you want any last parting words, for folks as we get
I
out of here?
always say once again, Miss Miller, just thank you for sharing your story. As an HBCU alum, Arlana's story really hit home. Because I think about all the smiling faces of the cheerleaders at Fayetteville State, and
Yeah.
just how happy they always were. And sometimes when you always see somebody in a certain state, you just never think to ask, "Well, how are you?" So I challenge everybody on this tonight to text somebody and say, "How are you doing?" Call somebody and say, "How are you doing?" Check in with them and say, "You were on my mind." And I bet you'll be surprised by a response that you may get. So that is my challenge for tonight.
And to tap onto that, don't give, if somebody asks you, don't give the reflex response.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really going through something, tell them,
Right.
let it out, because we can get caught up in a routine. As said in the poem, we put on that smile as a facade. We'll pretend for the gram, and put on that facade for the fam. But really, if that question is asked, even if somebody is walking by, and they're just, as a reflex in the morning, no, you stop and you say something to get it out and let them know what you're truly going through. Because once again, I'm going to keep saying that it's a matter of life or death. Truly. Janice, you want to say anything to the parents who are, who are going through what you're going through right now, grieving, or any additional support that we can provide for you?
No, I just want to say, parents, just be there for your kids. Like I said, I don't care if they call you extra because I was that extra parent. Just love on your kids and
I like that.
let them know you love them. I mean, I'm serious. Just let them know you love them. And if you have to take a day off from work and spend some extra time with your kid, do it. Just be present and be there and let them know you love them. I mean, seriously, let your kids know you love them. No matter what they're going through, they can tell you. You're not going to judge them. You're going to get them some help. And I think our kids look at us like we're going to judge them. If you really love your kids, you won't judge them. You just want the best for them and want them to be happy. And that's every parent. I mean, as educators, we say that all the time. Every kid parent wants the best for them. And we're just going to have to go backwards. Stop and spend more time with our kids. And I know y'all said, well, we spend time with them, but we got to listen to them, really listen to them. And I thank you guys. I thank you, Brian. Again, like I said, I thank Southern University for starting the scholarship, Southern University Cheer, DeSoto Cheer, DeSoto ISD. I think my church family, Community Mission Baptist Church, Pastor Epps, he's been awesome. I mean, helped me pick out the casket for my baby and everything. I was it was overwhelming. I think Captain Kibbe, he didn't have to, but he even told me he prayed over her body. And I just said, thank you. I mean, I thank him for keeping the letter that she left me in the car. Anybody else probably would have did something else with it. Even though this is a tragic thing, I still want it to be where we can help somebody else through this so that we can constantly get help for our babies. So those numbers will go down. We don't need those numbers to go up. We've got to get some help, support system. First step, yes, we got a 3-digit number. Now we got to get help at the campuses, at the colleges, universities for our babies. And I would love for them to partner with the parents where we can have more access to our students, grades, records, things that they're dealing with on campus. But that comes with our relationship with our kids where they feel comfortable letting us in to get those emails and those records of what's going on.
Yeah.
And if you see students at college, you see somebody who's separating themselves from somebody, become that friend to that person who's been there for everybody else and just love on them too. Because separation is real. When they start separating themselves from somebody, that's a stage of depression.
Yeah, sign right there.
Yeah.
So let's pay attention to those signs, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not ignore them. Constantly check in. Be extra.
Yeah, be extra.
Be extra.
Do the most.
Yes,
Yes.
do
Do
the
the
most.
most.
Yes.
I love that. Perfect way to end tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in this conversation. Actually, we'll be on tomorrow night to culminate fourth season of Making Learning Addictive. We'll have a special guest for tomorrow night, and that would be episode 120 of 4 years. But none more important than tonight's conversation. So once again, Ms. Miller, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to working with you to continue Arlana's legacy and doing more. Calvin, we got some work to do, bro.
Yes, we
We
do.
got some work to do.
Thank
Let's go
you.
ahead and get to work. We'll see you all later on.
Thank you.